The night was cold and quiet across the empty fields of Jonah's small farm. The kind of silence that pressed against the ears like cotton. But just past midnight, a sound broke that stillness, soft at first, like something dragging across wood. Then a sharp knock. Knock. Knock from inside the old barn near the trees. Jonah sat up in his creaky bed. The blanket still wrapped around him as he held his breath. His tired eyes scanned the shadows on the wall. Maybe it was just the wind. Or maybe one of the barn doors had come loose again. He rubbed his face and stood, grabbing the flashlight from his nightstand and the old rifle from the wall. Not loaded, but it still made him feel less alone. The air outside stung his skin, cold wind slipping through the holes in his coat. The moon was half hidden by clouds, and the barn loomed like a black giant ahead. He heard it again, that scratching sound, followed by a soft whimper, something small, scared maybe. Jonah stepped carefully, his boots crunching on gravel, his fingers tight on the flashlight as he pushed open the barn door. It creaked like an old ghost, and then he saw her. Half buried under a pile of hay, curled up like a wounded animal, was a child, or something like a child, but not human. Her skin shimmered with a pale violet hue, her thin arms trembling. One leg twisted at a wrong angle, her hair long and silver like moonlight. And her eyes, huge, glowing faint blue, looked at him with terror. Jonah froze, not from fear, but from confusion. He whispered softly, "It's okay, I won't hurt you." But the girl flinched. A small device in her ear blinked once. Then a whisper returned in broken, united English. "Please, no hurt, no cell, please." His heart dropped. Who was she? Where did she come from? And why did she think he would sell her? Jonah knelt down, slowly pushing away the hay. Her body was thin, fragile. A trail of purple blood ran down her ankle, soaking into the straw. She whimpered again, and then her eyes rolled back as she fainted. Without thinking, Jonah dropped the rifle, scooped her into his arms. She weighed less than a sack of grain. Her skin felt warm, but too soft, like she wasn't built for a world this harsh. Thunder rolled in the distance as rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. He rushed back to the farmhouse, kicking open the door, setting her down gently near the fireplace on the rug. He lit a fire, wrapped her in a blanket, checked her leg. It wasn't broken, but it was swollen bad. He didn't know alien medicine, but he had some herbal ointment. He whispered again, "You'll be all right, kid," though she didn't respond. As the wind howled outside, Jonah sat beside her, watching the fire reflect in her glowing skin. Something about her made his heart ache, not fear, not danger, but a deep sadness, like she didn't belong anywhere, like she had been running far too long. He heard a rustle at the window and turned quick. But it was only a tree branch swaying. Still, something felt off, like they were being watched, not by animals, not by people, but something else. He closed the curtains and loaded the rifle this time, just in case. She stirred once in the night, whispering a name, not his. Not anyone he knew, just a word, soft and musical, then fell still again. Jonah didn't sleep. He sat there in the old wooden chair, eyes on the girl, mind full of questions, heart full of something strange and new. Outside, hidden deep in the woods, a red light blinked, watching the farmhouse from afar. And beneath the dirt of the barn, one symbol glowed faintly, scratched into the wood, one Jonah hadn't seen yet. And inside the house, beside the fire, the small alien girl slept, her breathing slow. Her fingers curled around the blanket like it was the only thing keeping her from disappearing. Jonah watched her and whispered to the dark, "Who are you, and what have I just gotten into?" She didn't move for a long time, only stared, as if waiting for him to turn into someone else, someone cruel. Finally her voice came soft and mechanical through the translator clipped to her ear. Why not sell me, Jonah? Blinked the question, hitting him like cold water. He frowned and leaned forward, his voice low, steady. I don't sell people. She tilted her head, her mouth twitching like she didn't believe him. Her eyes flicked to the door, the window, the fire, then back to the bread. You, human, she said. Humans. Jonah exhaled through his nose and gave a sad nod. Some do, not all. He pointed to the bread. Eat. You need it. Her fingers moved slow, reaching for the bread as if expecting it to vanish or bite her. She took one piece, sniffed it, then took a small bite. Her eyes closed for a second and something soft passed over her face, something like relief. What's your name? Jonah asked. She hesitated, then whispered, Lyra. That's a nice name, Lyra. I'm Jonah. Welcome to my place. She blinked at him, confused. Welcome? Like home? Yeah, like home, Jonah said, though he wasn't sure why his chest ached a little when he said it. Lyra looked down at the floor, her fingers tight around the bread. She chewed in silence, then spoke again, her voice slow. I escape from Cade's big metal truck. Many like me, others not make it. I jump, run, hide your barn-hurt leg. Bad. Jonah listened quietly, every word building a picture in his mind, a nightmare image of children locked up, sold like objects, cargo, not people. Who was transporting you? He asked, but Lyra only shook her head, her eyes dark now, her hands shaking. Bad ones. They take rare ones like me, for fighting for, selling for, display. Jonah felt sick, but didn't show it. Instead, he stood and grabbed a pillow and another blanket. He placed them near her, then said, you stay here, till you re-strong again, then we figure out what to do next. All right, she looked at him like she didn't understand the kindness, and maybe she didn't maybe no one had ever given her anything without asking for something in return. Why you help? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He shrugged, because it's right, and because no one helped me when I needed it once. The room fell quiet again. Only the soft pop of firewood and Lyra's slow chewing breaking the silence. Outside, the fog thickened, hiding the sun, and shadows moved along the edge of the trees, quiet, fast, almost invisible. Lyra's ears twitched once she glanced at the window, then back at Jonah. They come soon, maybe find me, maybe hurt you. Jonah shook his head. Let them come, this is my land, and I daren't let monsters steal from my barn. Not even monsters in suits. Lyra stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once slow, and for the first time she lowered her shoulders and closed her eyes. She trusted him just a little enough to stay. The sun rose behind heavy clouds the next day, painting the sky in dull gray streaks. The wind carried the smell of wet dirt and old hay. As Jonah walked out to the barn to feed the animals, everything seemed quiet, too quiet for a morning like this, and when he opened the barn door, his heart stopped. There on the inside of the wooden door, just above the latch, a strange symbol had been carved, shallow, but glowing faintly with a dim red light. Not with paint, not with a knife. It pulsed like it had been burned in without fire. Its shape twisted and sharp, like a warning written in a language only fear could understand. Jonah stepped back, staring at it, trying to make sense of the pattern. He didn't know what it meant, but his gut told him it was trouble. Not a prank, not some kid messing around. This was a message meant for someone. And he had a good guess who. He ran back to the house, boots thudding against the wet ground. He burst through the door and called out, Lyra, come look at this now. She was already sitting up, breathing hard, her eyes wide like she had felt it before he even said a word. She limped over slowly, her leg still weak, and when she saw the mark, she let out a soft cry. Almost like pain, she reached toward it, but pulled her hand back at the last second. Do you know what this is? Jonah asked, voice low but sharp. Lyra nodded, her lips trembling. Hunter S. Mark, it says return the property or face judgment. It means they tracked my blood to the barn last night. They leave it as final warning. Jonah clenched his jaw, his hands fists at his side. He looked back at the house and then to the woods around the property. They're close then watching, maybe even now, he said. Eyes scanning the trees, Lyra sat down on a bale of hay, her voice barely a whisper. They dante knock again. Next time they take, they burn, they erase. Jonah crouched in front of her and said, "We won." T, wait for them to knock. We hide you better, you stay inside, I'll board the barn. I'll watch the road, and if they come, I'll be ready. She looked at him, unsure. You fight them for me. I don't leave people behind, he said, steady and clear. Lyra lowered her head, her silver hair falling over her face. You don't understand. They re not people like you. They re soldiers grown in labs, cold inside. They have no face, no fear, no heart. Jonah stood slowly and said, then maybe it's time someone showed them what a real heart can do. He got to work hammering boards over the old barn windows, nailing extra locks on the front door, setting wire traps around the fence line. He hadn't used his hunting tools in years, but his hands remembered what to do inside the house. Lyra moved slow, trying to stay quiet, but every time she looked out the window, she felt her pulse spike. She kept thinking she saw shapes in the fog movement that vanished. When she blinked once, she saw a red glint like an eye just past the cornfield, but when Jonah rushed outside, nothing was there. That night the wind howled like a beast, and the house groaned with each gust. Lyra lay curled on the couch, her small hands clutching the blanket. Jonah sat in his chair, gun across his lap, eyes fixed on the front door, not blinking, not speaking, just waiting. Some time past midnight, a soft humming sound passed overhead like a drone or small ship flying low. Jonah rushed to the window, but saw only shadows and wind, but Lyra whispered, they scan for heat, they smell energy, they will know. I'm here soon. Jonah turned to her and said, then we make it harder for them to see, harder to find, and if they try to enter, they better be ready for a fight. She looked at him, her eyes glowing in the firelight, and said most humans would have traded me by now for gold or safety or silence. He shrugged and said, I'm not most humans for a moment. The fear in her eyes faded just a little. She leaned back and whispered, then maybe I'm not just a runaway anymore. Maybe I'm home. But outside in the dark, two sets of red eyes blinked slowly. And the dirt near the barn shifted as something buried deep began to crawl upward. The morning air felt heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. As Jonah stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards cold under his bare feet, he scanned the road, the trees, the open fields, but nothing moved except the fog curling low across the ground still. He felt watched, like eyes were hidden behind every shadow, following every step he took. Lyra sat just inside the door, wrapped in a blanket, her silver hair messy, her glowing eyes dim with fear. She kept glancing toward the barn as if the hunter's mark on the door was alive and waiting to strike again. She whispered, Jonah, stay close, Don. T walk far. They will come soon. Hunters smile when they lie. They smile before they killed. Jonah gave her a small nod, but didn't T answer. He didn't T want to scare her more. But the truth was, he felt it too, the sense that danger was close, so close, it was practically breathing against the windows. It arrived faster than he expected. A black truck rolled down the dirt road, smooth and slow like it belonged there, even though it didn't. T's sunlight caught the chrome, but the windows were tinted so dark they looked like mirrors. The truck stopped right in front of Jonah's porch, silent engine humming low. Like a machine holding rage inside, a man stepped out dressed in a perfect dark suit, boots too clean for farm. Dust hair slicked back, face polished, with a pleasant smile that didn't reach his eyes. He held a small device in one hand, a silver badge in the other. Morning, sir, he called out, voice friendly but sharp as broken glass. He walked toward the porch with calm, confident steps. I am from Off-World Freight. Inspection routine matter. We researching for missing biological property, escaped last night from transport vessel. Do you mind if I ask a few questions? Jonah didn't blink, didn't step back. Didn't invite him inside. He kept his hands loose at his sides and said, Haven. Seen anything unusual, sir? Just a normal night, normal morning. The man's smile widened in a way that made Jonah's skin crawl. Unusual is interesting. Word, he said. May I look around your property? Jonah shook his head slow. This is private land. No warrant, no walk around. Simple as that. The man laughed, gently, as if Jonah told a sweet joke. Oh, humans and their old world rules, he said, tapping the silver badge. This allows me to search for lost cargo without delay, but I am polite, so I ask first. Jonah's jaw tightened. You asked? I answered. You can turn around now. For a moment, the man simply stared. Then something cruel flashed behind his fake smile. He bent down, pretending to adjust his boot, and when he stood again, a small metallic tag lay on the porch next to Jonah's foot, a tiny blinking red light pulsing under the dirt. Jonah didn't react. He kept his face calm, but inside, his heart hammered because he knew exactly what that was, a tracker. A silent beacon sending signals to whoever was listening. The man tipped his head politely. Well, sir, thank you for your cooperation. If you see anything strange, livestock wandering off, animals making noise, lights in the sky, do give us a call. He handed Jonah a card, though it was clear he didn't expect Jonah to use it. Then he turned, walked to his truck, and drove away, dust rising in a long, thin trail behind him. Jonah waited until the sound of the engine faded. Then he grabbed the blinking tag with his boot and slid it into a metal bucket. He carried it behind the house, walked to the old well, and kicked the bucket inside, listening to it clatter down into the deep, dark water, breaking the signal he hoped. When he returned inside, Lyra stood shaking near the table, tears gathering in her glowing eyes. She said, Jonah, I saw him through the floor. He is not man, he's hunter drone, mind wrapped in skin. They smell fear. They track life energy. They know. I was near Jonah, stepped beside her, and gently held her shoulders. You? Safe here, he said. But she shook her head. No. I should leave. They hurt you. They destroy everything to get me. He didn't. Let go. He crouched to her level and said, slow and firm, I don't let good people get taken from my land. You not leaving because I am not giving you up. Lyra's breath hitched as she whispered, no one ever said that to me before. Not once. She leaned forward, her forehead touching his chest, small, trembling hands holding his shirt like she thought he might disappear if she blinked. Outside in the trees, a faint red glimmer flashed once, then vanished as something whispered through the forest, preparing to return, not smiling this time. The fire crackled soft inside the farmhouse as the storm outside whispered against the windows. Rain, tapping like nervous fingers, thunder distant but steady. The night was quiet, but Jonah felt no peace. Not anymore. He stayed near the front door, his rifle resting against the wall, his eyes watching every shadow that moved. Lyra lay on the couch, her leg still wrapped in cloth, her breathing shallow, her eyes half open. She had not spoken much since the man left, only stared at the ceiling like she was counting the seconds until something terrible happened again. But something changed that night, something small at first. Jonah was stirring soup on the stove when he heard a hum behind him, low and soft, like a note being held in the air. He turned and saw Lyra, glowing faintly, her skin shimmering with silver light, her hair lifting slightly like wind was moving through it. Though the windows were closed, he stepped closer, his voice careful. Lyra, you all right? She blinked slow, her hands raised, an open light pouring from her palms like mist weaving through her fingers, soft and harmless, like smoke that danced. I feel strange, she whispered, not afraid, more like awake. Something is opening inside. Jonah crouched beside her, not too close, and asked, is it hurting you? No, she said, looking at her hands in wonder. It feels like remembering something I forgot, like a song from before I was born. Jonah didn't understand the words, but he understood the weight in them. The feeling that something important was waking inside her, and it wasn't just fear or pain. It was power. Later that night, as the wind howled stronger outside, Lyra stood for the first time since she arrived, limping. Still, but stronger, she walked to the window and stared out, her voice soft. They come again tonight? I feel them moving through the dark, I feel them thinking. Jonah came beside her and asked, "What do you mean thinking?" Lyra pressed her hand to the glass and said, "They are connected, one mind split. Across many, like a net made of shadows and silence, they speak without words, they search without eyes, they do not sleep." Jonah loaded more rounds into his rifle and said, "Then we stay ready," but Lyra shook her head, her body glowing brighter. "Now I Dan. T wants you to fight for me anymore, I want to fight too." Jonah looked at her. She was still just a girl, thin and wounded. But something behind her eyes was older, deeper, like fire trapped under ice. He didn't argue. He just nodded and said, "Then we stand together." The hours passed slow, until near midnight, the glow from Lyra's body pulsed brighter, her feet lifting slightly off the floor, her hair spreading wide around her face. Her breath, even and calm, her hands raised. Jonah stepped back, watching in awe as the light around her grew into a soft sphere floating like a second skin around her body. The air crackled faintly, and the fireplace dimmed like the flames themselves. Were afraid, Lyra opened her eyes fully and said, "I remember now who I was before the cage, before the ship, before the pain." She reached toward Jonah and touched his arm, where an old scar lay from years ago, a deep burn he never treated right. And as her fingers touched it, the scar faded, gone like it had never been. Jonah stared down, then back at her. What was that? How she answered, with a small, sad smile. "My people are not soldiers. We are healers. We are memory keepers. But they took us, changed us, tried to use what we are as weapons. But I remember now, and I choose not to be what they made." Outside, the trees began to shake, not from wind, but from something moving fast and low. Jonah looked out the window and saw shadows gathering near the barn, shapes too large to be human and too quiet to be machines. Lyra said softly, "They found the beacon again, even at the bottom of the well. They feel my energy when I glow this strong. I call to them like a flare." Jonah took his rifle and said, "Then we turn off the light, we hide again." But Lyra said, "No more hiding, not tonight." She stepped onto the porch, barefoot, the light around her turning white and gold, her eyes burning with strength, not fear. She raised one hand toward the field and whispered something in her own language, something old and full of sorrow, and far in the distance the shadows stopped moving, like they heard her voice and didn't know what to do next. Jonah stood behind her, silent, ready to fight, but now unsure if he was the one doing the protecting anymore. The ground was wet from last night's storm, the fields quiet under the early gray light, as if nature itself was hiding. Jonah stood at the edge of the cornfield, scanning the horizon, his boots sinking into the soft earth, his breath heavy in the cold air. Something was coming. He didn't need to see it to know it. Lyra stood behind him, wrapped in his oversized jacket, her glowing skin dimmed by will not weakness. Her energy hidden, buried deep inside, like a flame held behind glass. She looked at the sky and whispered, "They are close, they land soon. I can feel the pulse of their ship, it calls to my blood." Jonah loaded the last shell into his rifle and said, calm and sure, "Then we finish this here. No more running, no more hiding." He had been preparing all night, old tricks from a past he thought. He buried tripwires hidden in mud, small explosives from his mining days, smoke flares tied to the fence line. He knew his land better than any scanner or satellite could understand. It was his shield and his weapon. The hum came just after noon, low like thunder behind clouds. The cornstalks bent in one direction as the air shimmered, and a black ship appeared above the field. No lights, no markings, just sharp, silent death floating 10 feet above the soil. From the underbelly, a ramp dropped, and 5 figures walked out, moving in perfect rhythm, tall, armored, with faces hidden behind smooth black masks. No words, no signals, just movement, pure and fast. Jonah stepped forward, standing between them and the farmhouse, his rifle pointed low, his hands steady. The leader of the group raised one arm, and a voice rang out through a speaker, cold and flat, "Deliver the asset now, and you may live." Jonah shook his head, not stepping back, not flinching. "You're not taking her, not today, not ever." There was a pause, then a sharp, high-pitched tone as one of the soldiers stepped forward, scanning him from head to toe, his weapon rising before he could fire the earth. Beneath him exploded a trap Jonah, set lit by a hidden wire. The blast knocked the soldier off balance, but he stood. Again, too fast, too strong, they began to move, flanking him, splitting apart, one headed toward the barn to toward the house. Lyra stepped out of the doorway, glowing again, her body wrapped in light. Her voice steady and loud, "Stop, or I will. Unleash all that I am." The soldiers paused for 1 second, long enough for Jonah to fire his rifle, hitting one square in the chest. The shot echoed across the ruby crest. I echoed across the valley, but the armor held the soldier, staggered, but did not fall. Jonah kept firing until he was out, then threw the rifle aside and grabbed the metal rod hidden in his coat, ready to fight hand to hand if needed. One soldier reached the porch and raised his arm toward Lyra. His weapon charged, but Lyra's eyes blazed and a pulse of energy burst from her chest, knocking him off the steps into the dirt. She raised both hands, now speaking words in her language, words full of power and sorrow. The light around her pulsed and twisted, forming a shield in the air, a barrier of memory and pain. Jonah watched as the soldiers tried to pass through it and failed. Their weapons flickered, their steps slowed like they were moving through water. One of them removed his helmet and dropped to his knees, his face pale and shaking, his voice trembling royal blood. He whispered, "It cannot be." Lyra stepped forward, walking past Jonah, her body floating now inches above the ground, the sky above twisted. As her energy reached into the air, disrupting the ship systems, the engines screamed, then died, and the black ship tilted, crashing into the far field without fire, only silence. The remaining soldiers backed away, eyes wide behind their masks. They didn't run, but they didn't fight either. Lyra looked at them and said, "Return to your masters, tell them I remember who I am. Tell them I will never be owned again." They vanished into the fog, their forms swallowed by shadow and smoke. Jonah fell to one knee, breath catching in his chest, not from fear, but from awe. He looked up at her and whispered softly, "What are you, Lyra?" Turned to him, her glow fading as her feet touched the earth again, and said, "I am someone who was broken and now is whole because of one human who saw a child, not a weapon." The sky was clear for the first time in days, blue and wide, with no ships, no shadows, no eyes watching. The wind moved gently through the trees like a breath of peace. Across the land, Jonah stood by the porch, a cup of coffee in his hand, watching the barn where everything had begun. It was quiet now. The mark on the door had faded, burned away by something stronger than fear. Lyra sat on the porch steps, her legs crossed, her eyes watching a small bird fluttering in the lot. Dirt, she smiled softly, her silver hair falling over one shoulder, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Her glow was gone for now, but Jonah knew it was still inside her, waiting, calm and silent. Like the morning after a storm, she turned her head slightly and said, "They won. Come back, not for now. I sent a message." They understood. Jonah nodded, sipped his coffee, and asked, "What did you say?" "I showed them truth," she answered, her voice light. "I let them feel what it's like to be hunted, to be seen as less than life. I gave them a taste of what they gave me." He didn't say anything, just watched the bird hop along the fence post and fly away into the trees. Later that day, Lyra walked through the field barefoot, feeling the soil between her toes, the earth responding to her like it knew her heart, like it forgave her pain. She placed her hands on a dying tree and whispered old words from her language. And the leaves turned green again, not bright, not sudden, just enough to show life still wanted to grow. Jonah watched from a distance, unsure if what he felt was pride or something deeper. He had taken her in as a stranger, but now he could not imagine his home without her presence. She was no longer just a lost alien girl, she was family. That evening she gave him a gift, a small seed glowing with faint light, pulsing like a heartbeat. She placed it in his hand and said, "Plant this when the moon is highest and the air is warm. It will grow something that only appears once every 1,000 years. It is a promise." He looked down at it, then back at her and asked, "Will I see you again?" She smiled, not with sadness, but with something older, something wise. If the seed grows, I will feel it across the stars and I will return. They stood together in silence as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sky turning gold, then deep blue, the stars blinking one by one. That night, Lyra left not in a ship, not with fire or engines, but with light, her body lifting slowly into the air, her voice whispering. Goodbye in his mind, not loud, not forced, just soft, like a memory he wanted to keep forever. He watched until the light faded into the sky, his hand still holding the seed tight against his chest, the farmhouse behind him glowing warm with firelight. Seasons passed, the fields grew and rested. The world kept turning, and still Jonah waited. He kept the house clean, the barn safe, the porch light on every night, not because he expected danger, but because he hoped she might come back. Then one night years later, he walked to the edge of the field under a full silver moon, the air warm. Still he dug a small hole in the earth and planted the seed with care, covering it with both hands, whispering her name once, just once. Days passed, then weeks, and one morning when he opened the door, there it was, a single flower, standing tall in the middle of the field, its petals shining like her hair, its center pulsing with soft blue light. He smiled, his heart pounding like a young man again, and he knew she felt it wherever she was, she knew. And as he stood there, a wind moved through the trees, and the sky shimmered just slightly, as if something turned. He whispered to the air, "Welcome home, Lyra," and turned back toward the house, not needing to see her yet, because he already knew she had kept her promise, and so had he. The end.